Nadaraja Pillai, sir, Professor and Deputy Director, former SRLC Principal, served as a teacher more than 30 years. And also, he has 124 books on his credit, 124 books. And Bhasha Mandakini, one of the great venture of Central Institute of Indian Languages, Government of India. He is the key person who supports not only from Tamil language, he knows 7+. 7+ means more multilingual. That is what it means. He is a multilingual personality and he's a lovely teacher. We love to have him in our training programs to make it fruitful. And he is, he trained more than 59,000 students, of different language groups, not only Southern Indian language groups, and more than that, 14 tribal languages and minor languages. There are many things to share about him. And also he worked in the National Institute of Education Sri Lanka, Singapore Mahatma Gandhi Institute Mauritius, and also he is advisor to the government of Singapore regarding language teaching and language education, teacher education basically. He prepared many documentaries, more than 310 audio cassettes, and also 250 research articles in Tamil and English as well, and produced visual documentaries, 290 visual documentaries of Tamil language, literature, art and culture. With this, I welcome you, sir. I welcome you on behalf of Central Institute of Indian Languages, National Translation Mission. Your grandfather, like a teacher, it is not an invitation. We love to have you with us. Yeah. And also on behalf of Rama Devi University, Women's University, Women Translators Training Program. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And his topic is linguistic issues in translation. Each and every, he is, we can say, mobile, grammar and encyclopedia of linguistics. We welcome you, sir. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Panda and Matthew. It's an elaborate introduction to me. I'm thankful to you. Today's program, today's talk perhaps will be a little different from what you have been listened to. Except one person, Dr. Sahu, Anita Sahu or somebody, who talked about linguistics and translation. Perhaps you got a lot of points from her. And these points will be a little different. This will be practical oriented talk. Okay, let's see how it works. My dear friends, today's lecture is on linguistic issues and translation. When two languages are concerned, there will be a lot of issues. What's an issue? We'll first we'll talk about that, and then we'll see that. Okay, what is an issue here as far as the linguistics is concerned? Okay, there are many problems in translation. Do you have any problems in translating? While you translate, you would have faced a lot of problems. The sentences, the phrases, word order, the vocabulary, how to find out solutions for it. These are all problems. When you translate a sentence, you may find some problems. The phrases of the sentences, or word order, even word order will be a problem, because when you write a long sentence, there will be a problem of word order, because some languages are fixed word order. We will see all these points now. The vocabulary, definitely it will, because words change from language to language. So to find out solutions to this problem, a problem solving mechanism is linguistics. So when you have linguistics, knowledge of linguistics, you will be a better translator. I don't say without knowledge of linguistics you will not become, But still, you'll become a good translator when you have the knowledge of linguistics. So let's see some more issues. Language. What's a language now? What's a language? Language is one of the primary medium of communication everybody knows. And language is a bundle of rules. This is more important for us. Okay. Because language consists of rules. Unless we know the rules, our translation will not be successful or fruitful. There is a word order, subject, verb, object, verb order, SOV. As far as the Indian language is concerned, we have SOV approximately. There are few languages where the order changes also. But here normally, subject, object, verb final sentences are mostly Indian. Okay, and then subject, verb, object, SVO. This is in English, sir. Okay. Subject, verb, object will be the final one. We will see again. I will give you examples for these things a little later. And language is a bundle of skills also. See, I told you that it's a bundle of rules. Now I am telling it's a bundle of skills. What is bundle of skills? There are 4, 5, 6 skills. For example, listening. Second is speaking, reading, writing. Observation is also a skill. In the early days of our education, we observed things and then learned things, isn't it? So in that case, observation is also a good skill. And finally, now for us, it's a translation skill. This was a skill to develop. So everything in this world, in this era, is discussed in terms of skills, orientation of skills. That's more important nowadays, very much important. And now we say languages are different. Am I true? So when you talk about Odia and Bangla, though they belong to the same subsect of Indo-Aryan, we have differences. Or Odia and Tamil, for example, plenty of differences because they belong to different families of languages. Okay. So in that way, what will be the approximate differences between these two? In phonology, phonology is nothing but the study of speech sounds. Morphology, words and affixes. Affixes is suffix, infix, prefix, etc. And then syntax, the sentence structure, semantics, the meaning. These are all the 4 or 5. One more is there, morphophonemics. We normally don't discuss here. Leave it. And then pragmatics, how the language is used in context. So pragmatics is more important for us in translation because language used in context is more important for us. And the discourse. Each language has a discourse structure. Whether it's spoken discourse or the written discourse, you have different structures. So approximately these 4 plus 2 points are very difficult for you while you translate. But translator must know the language rules for better translation. This is what I'm telling. So far, linguistics came in 1900s and plus, okay. But before that, did we translate? The whole world was translating. But for us now, the present world of scientific world, the world of technology, world of computer, we need to have the rules. Only if you have the rules, you know the rules, you will be a better translator. Let's see, for example, 3 sentences I'm going to read. You try to translate into your mother tongue. Okay. The boy who came to my house did not go to the film. So there are 2 clauses. One is this is called a relative participle construction. Whenever who is there, it's a relative participle construction. And the second one is, if you come to my house, I will give the book. Okay, this is a conditional clause sentence, conditional sentence. He came to my house and left after lunch. This is a coordinate coordination condition in English, whereas in our language, Indian language, is different. So if you calculate, if you translate these 3 sentences into your mother tongue and then listen to me, you will feel it better for. Okay, now let's see. Let's say the first sentence, the boy who came to my house did not go to the club. In Hindi, how do you say? Jo ladka aaya tha. Okay, wo. So jo and wo are important. So in a relative participle construction like who, the boy who came in English, for who we use 2 markers, discontinuous morphemes, jo and wo. They are not coming together. One phrase comes first, jo ladka aaya tha, then O, that is the second clause. Okay, this is Hindi sentence. Whereas you come down to the Dravidian sentences, Vanda Sirvan, Tamil, Vachina Vadu, etc., Telugu, Banda Huduga, Kannada, Vanna Payan Malayalam. Okay, here you see Banda, Vachina, Vanna. These represent the relative participle construction. There is no relative clause pronouns here, relative pronouns in Dravidian languages. The verb itself, with some modifications, like Vanda or Banda in Kannada, Va is the verb root, Inda is the tense marker, past tense marker plus R. So this is the structure of relative participle. So when you translate from Tamil to English, Tamil to Hindi, or Hindi to Tamil, you must know the sentence structure. Then only you can do it better. Or let's take the second sentence. If you come to my house, if you come to my, if clause is there. Okay, it's a conditional clause. But like see in Hindi, yadi tum ayato. Okay, yadi is the form. Like if you have in Hindi, yadi is there. But again, a discontinuous word is there, to. Yadi to should go together like jo, o, etc., in Hindi. But here in Tamil, let's say Vandal, Vandal is a conditional form. Vandal, Vandangil, Malayalam, Bandre, etc., in the Dravidian language. Again, you see, verb is more important in the Dravidian language. All the suffixes, all the forms, relative participle, verbal participle, whatever be the conditional sentences, all are formed from out of the verbal verbs. So adding some suffixes. For example, here Vandal, VA is Va is the verb root, Inda is the past tense marker plus all, AAL, if you add, that becomes a conditional clause. So as we did for relative participle here also, Bandre is also like that in Kannada. So here in the Dravidian languages, you should go for the verb. Verb is more important than the other grammatical structures. Now see the third one. He came to my house and left after lunch. So there in English we use and, whereas in our Indian languages we use gar akar. So he came to my house, gar akar, then left. Okay. So akar is a subordinate clause here. In Tamil also, வீட்டுக்கு வந்து, மனகே பந்து, வீட்டிலேக்கு வந்தோ, இண்டிக்கு வச்சி. So these four languages, if you see, again I want to emphasize that in the Dravidian language, verb plays a major role. All the grammatical, not all, almost all the grammatical structures are derived from the verb by suffixing some markers. Okay. Now let's go to the next point. Translation. Translation by rules and statistics. Now, you know about Google Translation. But Google Translation is, most of the time, is very poor. Very, very poor. Because the language is very complex. Language is more intuitive for us, for the brain. Whereas Google Translation with a machine, you may not find it a fruitful translation. So we go for translation by rules and not by statistics. Perhaps somebody would have told you. Now let's say, role of linguistics in problem solving. This is an introduction to what the issues are. You could find out 3 sentences, and out of 3, I explained what the problems are. Now let's see here. What is linguistics? I am not going to teach you linguistics now. Perhaps that Madam Dr. Sahu, Mrs. Sahu or Ms. Sahu has told you some more about linguistics. But in brief, linguistics is a scientific study of language, and it involves, what do we do? The analysis of form. What we just I explained to you. That's the analysis of form is the structure. What involves? So we analyze the structures of sentences. Then the second one is meaning. How to arrive at the meaning. There are a lot of problems in finding the meanings. And the third one is language in context. Language used in context is the pragmatics of it. So pragmatics is nothing but when you use language in context, you have to change sometimes the rules as per the social rules, societal rules. Society gives us some rules, not only the language. We'll see that one again. But let's show here the next one, structural language. This is a form. Study of form, study of structure is structural language. So as I told you earlier, it talks about phonology, sound system. Morphology, word and affix system. Word is book, for example, is a word. Books is an affix. So its morphology deals with such words like book plus yes, books. Okay, like that. Syntax, as I told you, 3 sentences. In English, it is who clause or if clause, etc. In Indian language, is entirely different one. And semantics is a study of meaning. As I told you, add pragmatic and discourse analysis. If you are a master of these 4+2 structures or points, you will become a very good translator. This is what I expect. A translator cannot neglect any part of descriptive or otherwise called as structural linguistic studies if he or she is to make an adequate and appropriate translation. This is more important. See, anybody can translate. Anybody who knows 2 languages can translate from one to another. But more appropriate, more adequate translation can be done if you know linguistics or the language structures of a language. Okay, let's see some more. What is translation then? Now, after these 2 introductions, now I want to ask you a question. What is it? Process of bringing the text of one language into another language. Okay, this is what we call. Could you see the whole screen?
Yes,
Anyway, okay, it's a process. Okay, so here there is a problem in online courses, online training courses. Master, that means whoever gives a lecture or whoever discusses has to ask question and answer the questions also. If it's the direct classroom, I would ask you to analyze, ask you to answer this question, what is translation? But I have to answer now for you, process of bringing the text of one language into another language. Okay? Text is, why not a speech? Text, we call it translation. If it's a speech, interpretation. Okay, so we don't say translate. We can easily say I am translating, but normally it's not, because there in the speech you don't go for sentence structures one by one, word by one, nothing. You give the gist of what the other person talks about. So that is interpretation. Now let's say linguistic differences and translation strategies. What are the strategies or steps you should take while you translate? When there are linguistic differences in all the levels of language, as I told you, languages are different. There is a possibility of taking different strategies to translate. It depends on the language, target language or the source language. Now, for example, if you are translating from English or from Hindi or from Tamil, the strategies will differ, because the 3 languages have different structures, different forms of expression. So if you are translating from Hindi to your mother tongue, let's say Odia, maybe there are chances of similarities, but there are differences. When it is English, definitely linguistically and culturally difference will be there. And from Tamil also, since it belongs to Dravidian language, you may find it because the structures are different. Okay? If the structures are different, the strategies or steps you have to take will also differ. Okay, that's my point, and you have to remember this point very carefully. Now let's say language families of India. As I told you, there are the examples I have been giving. They belong to different language families. In India, we have 4 families. 5th one is also there in Andaman. But normally we say Aryan language, Dravidian family. These are all the families. Okay, Aryan family, Dravidian family, Munda, or Austro-Asiatic language family, or Tibeto-Burman family. These are there throughout our country. Okay, well, how to express it? Here we take mainly Tamil and Hindi to present Dravidian and Aryan respectively, with English for reference. The 3 languages I will be discussing, and of course other languages as well whenever time requires. Okay, and the points request. Now see, this is India map. If you see the blue one, let's say here, this one is as you know, this is an area of Dravidian languages. There is one in Pakistan also. You can see there is a blue area. There, Brahui. Brahui is another Dravidian language. Perhaps you know about this. That Brahui language is there. Okay. And then here you can see in the Bihar, Jharkhand, or West Bengal, etc. You find another violet color.
sir, we can't see the map. Sorry. Excuse me, sir.
Oh, what happened? Previously, let's say I will ready and show. And then now let's see. Now can you see that?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Ah,
can
okay. Okay. Because it's not full screen. We don't get it. Anyway, doesn't matter. So you have blue Dravidian language, as I told you here in Pakistan. There is Brahi speakers are there. Here also you can see blue in MP, Bihar, some part of it, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, etc. You will find a lot of Dravidian languages. There are approximately 27 Dravidian languages are there. And then here the violet one is a Munda family or an Austroasiatic family. And this yellow is green, green is yellow is the Aryan language. And this red from Kashmir to, you can bring down to Tripura, okay, or Mizoram. Up to that, you have the Tibeto-Burman family. So when, as I told you, languages are different, that means families make them different. Okay, let's go to the other one. Features of second source language, SLE source language, target language. Okay, now we have to divide these four families into two. One is cognate and other is non. These words are not difficult to understand. Cognate is languages, those languages belonging to the same family of language. Okay, for example, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, they belong to one family. So they are cognate languages. Okay. So they will have similar linguistic and cultural features. Am I right? There will be similar linguistic and cultural. For example, pronouns. If you take pronouns, non is first person singular, I. In Tamil, non, Kannada, nanu, Telugu, nenu, and Malayalam, nyan. You can see the similarities. Numerals, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You say one Tamil, ondu, okati, one. In two, number 2 is irandu, rendu, eradu, etc. in language. That means moor or 5, for example, anju, aidu, anju, etc. It comes. Okay. So it means if you see the pronouns and numerals and body parts as well, if they are different, for example, hand is a hat in Hindi, whereas in chai, kai, etc. in the Dravidian language. Okay. So that means there is similarities are there in cultural features. Of course, dosa, idlis are very common, or sambar, or pongal, for example. These features are common in the cognate languages. Similar vocabulary is also there. Anything you say, for example, come, va, one, va, varu, Malayalam, uchu, randi in Telugu, etc. Structure is also there, as I have been talking about this one. Whereas, if the similar cognate language, Bangla, Odia, Hindi, Marathi, Punjabi are also cognate languages. But you see, there are differences. For example, Ami is I in Bangla, Mai in this one, Ami, etc. in other languages as well. For example, Pani in Hindi, whereas in Punjabi, Marathi and Haryani Hindi, it is Pani, na. Okay, Pani is there. So even though they are similar, or Kela, for example, in Hindi it is Kela, in Marathi it is Kerala. La is there, retroflex la is there. So even if there are similarity in vocabulary, there may be little pronunciation or spelling variation in the languages. Okay, so it's easy in finding equivalences. When you are translating from Hindi to Marathi or Marathi to Hindi, it may be, I'm not saying fully, may be easy. Or from Punjabi to Hindi, may be easy. Translating the cultural information also. Okay. These points are very important when it is a cognate language. For example, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam are cognate languages. So you find a lot of similarities in the structure, in the vocabulary, in the phrase structure, everything will be cultural point also. Hindi, Punjabi, Oriya, Punjab, Marathi, etc. also cognate language. It depends on how you see that. Then cognate language example I give you. For example, Kannada and Tamil, if you take Avanu, Bandanu, you see the spelling Avanu, Bandanu. Tamil, Avan, Vandan. An is there. Okay. Avalu bandalu. Aval bandal. Malayalam and Tamil, if you take Avan Vannu, Avan Vandan, Aval Vannu, Aval Vandal. Whereas in Malayalam, you can find the PNG mark, person, number, gender marker is not there in Malayalam. The other three languages we have. Anyway, this is an example for cognate languages. Let's see some more. Non-cognate languages. Languages belong to two different language families or non-cognate languages. So when you translate from these non-cognate languages, it will be a little difficult. Translation will be affected because of the differences in linguistic and cultural features. Tamil and English or Hindi, Tamil and English or Hindi or Manipuri or Urdu are non-cognate languages. For example, here I'll give you, O Aya in Hindi, Avan Bandan, O Ayi, Aval Bandan. See how much it is. The vocabulary O is he, Avan, Aval in Tamil. O is called same in same he or she, it is O, but the end suffix makes use of the mother is aya, ai, etc. Okay. In that case, the languages are different. When you translate from one language to another, you have to be very careful. Odia, for example, I'll take, because this is from the Odia Women's University. I feel most of you are the other female. Okay, I want to use Odia or Odia. Some examples, not all fully. She wrote well in the examination. Say Parikya Bhalo, Bhalo Korichi. Korichi, for example, did only, isn't it? But not writing. Writing is Korichi, Bhalo Korichi. Okay. Avan, now see the Tamil equivalent. Say is Avan. Parikya is Tervu. Bhalo Nanraha. Korichi is not the wrote, right. எழுதினான். So Avan Tervu Nandraha எழுதினான். You see the difference. Okay. Say maybe he or she, but here the pronouns are different. Now let's say take another example. He will eat. Say Kaibo. Avan Sappuduvan. See the ending. Red, I have marked N, red. He will go. Say Jibo. Avan Povan. He will come. Say Ashibo. Avan Varvan. See the totally different things. Vocabulary, structure, formation, etc. are different from that of the other language. What is written in the letter? Chiti re kono leke hoichi. What here also you say this may be resembling same. In Tamil also chiti, for example, kadidam, re, il, kono, enna, எழுதியிருக்கிறாங்க. So this structure resembles same in almost all Indian languages, except the mark as a re. In Hindi it is me, kono kya, okay. Likachi, likha hua hai, or something like that in Hindi, and of course in Tamil it is ezhudi irukkirathu, etc. So it's difficult to understand that. Now let's see some more examples for Odia. How did you come? Tume kemiti asila. How did you sleep? Tume kemiti soilo. How did you write? Tume kemiti likhila. So you see, tume is tum, okay. How did you come? Tum or aap or whatever may be, but the structure is same. In Tamil also the same thing. Neenga eppadi eluduneenga, neenga eppadi thoonguneenga, neenga eppadi vandeenga. So neenga will be tume if you take, eppadi is kemiti and asila. Now verb structure is different. Structure is different, but the order is same. This is what I told you. Word order may be same, but the morphology or the suffixes or the grammatical markers will be different. Is there any problem in understanding Odia? Do you have any problem for a Hindi speaker? The sentence structure remains same. Is it a book? Yaha gote bohi ki. Now, how will you say in Hindi? Kya? The structure will be different, you see. Though they belong to the same cognate languages, yaha gote bohi ki. Kya ye pustak hai? So the question will be, kya will be there. Is it a book for the tag question? Or it's a book. Yaha gote bohi. Compared with Hindi, you will see do bohi. So for example, ye pustak hai is necessary in Hindi. But here you see yaha gote bohi without the auxiliary verb hai. I don't know whether it's because of the influence of Dravidian or Telugu. Because in Tamil, the Dravidian languages, you don't need for such sentences of copula verb. Copula verb is not. This is a copula verb here. Yaha gote bahi. Idu oru puttaham in Tamil. Okay. Idu okati pustakamu. Okay. The same structure is used here. So there are influence of other languages as well in sentences, in languages. We have to see, though Hindi and Oriya belong to the same, there are differences as well. Now, how to find all these things? The contrastive linguistics is one of the main focus or the subject of discussion to find out the linguistic problem. Education, if you want to translate, or computer, if you want to translate, how will you transliterate that into your language? There are loan words or borrowed words which are written in the script of our language, our mother tongue, but differently. Okay, they are different in writing system. In that way, we have to find out. So learn more before going into the actual job of translation. When you sit for translation, when you are going to translate, think contrastive linguistics. Think of the differences between the two languages. Then you will understand what the difficulties of language. Otherwise, also you will understand. But still, it's very important. You should know this. Now, contrastive. I will tell you something little about the contrastive linguistic analysis. It's a systematic study of pair of languages, as I told you, two languages, with a view to identifying their structural differences and similarities. Similarity, if there are similarities, it will be easy to translate. If there are differences, it will be difficult to translate. So differences are the areas of difficulties where you will struggle much. Okay. As I told you, the who construction, I'll remember those three sentences. You will find out the major differences will make you difficult to translate. Contrastive analysis is helpful for translators in designing translation material. How are you going to design your translation material? This will help you. Contrastive analysis, or simply CA, they call it in linguistics. Word-to-word translation. Are you going to make word-to-word translation, or transcreation, or paraphrase? If the differences are more and you are unable to write, translate, go for paraphrase, give this one. Or if you want to rewrite the whole story, borrow the translation. For example, the first day, I forgot his name, he was telling about Ramayanam or Ramayan is translated into many languages in India. He was mentioning about Kamba Ramayanam in Tamil. Kamba Ramayanam is not a translation. It's a transcreation. Kambar is the author, Valmiki is the author, like that. Kambar is the author in Tamil. He has borrowed the gist of the story and most of the story, scenes also, but he has recreated with the modifications of cultural points. You see, any story when you borrow from other language, there may be some changes in the culture. For example, I'll give you one example between Kamba Ramayanam and Valmiki Ramayanam. Sugriva and Vali. Vali's wife was Tara, and Sugrivan marries her. Whereas this is not allowed in the Tamil culture, because the brother's wife is considered as a mother. One cannot marry a mother. So this is a point of cultural difference. So Kambar has written, she remains as a widow. Okay, this is a problem. This is cultural problems. So transcreation makes you a little more point of culture. You have to think of culture, not only the language part of it. Now the B, translating a text of source language. Text, when you compare a text, you have to be very careful, because text contains not only sentences, more than language use, pragmatic, etc. You have to be very careful. Contrastive analysis helps you. Evaluating the translation. After once you translate, you can evaluate keeping both the source language text as well as your translation material together and find out. Okay. As I told you, CA is nothing but contrastive analysis. Aims to vet and spell out the probable problematic differences in meanings between languages. Okay, meaning is also more important. It helps to choose words for translation. Maybe there are a lot of words in a language, in your language, in your mother tongue. But which is the more appropriate, more similar, more nearer to the source text is more appropriate. So find out the differences and choose the correct word. It gives the morphological structures of a language. I'll again explain these things. It gives the details of phrase structure of a language. So we have noun phrase, verb phrase, you have conditional phrase, a lot of phrases are there. How it is formed. Not only the sentence, you have to. Let's see some features I will discuss here. Morphological features, as I told you. English, these are prepositions. In, of, etc., etc., or with, etc., are prepositions. They come before the noun. Whereas in our languages, Indian languages, they come after the noun. They may be suffixes as in Tamil or postpositions as in Hindi. For example, in preposition in English, may or of is ka, ki, ke, uska, uski, uske, etc. Knife, say is there. These are all postpositions or suffixes. Whereas in Tamil, if you see, in is il. I have made a dash marker. That means it's a suffix. In is a suffix. Udaya is a suffix. All is by. So these are all the morphological features. When you find a long sentence while translating in English, all the prepositions will be used, and you have to mentally create it, mentally calculate it, that these will be suffixes or postpositions after the noun they come. So unless you know this one, again it will be a problem. You will face a biggest problem in translation. Okay. For example, let's see, finite. Another one is finite verb structure. English, because verb plays the major role. Verb is the magnetic area of this one. So that is very important. So that's why I'm giving the final structure of these three languages. Verb plus tense marker is English. He walked. Okay, walked. Irregular verbs are there, bring, brought, etc. are there. But we also commit a lot of errors when we are learning English. If the past tense of bring is brought, bring, brought. What's the past tense of spring? It should be brought. It's not that. Okay. So these are my problem, our problems. If bring is brought, the irregular verbs make us confuse a lot of things. Spring must be brought, but it is sprang. Okay. These are all the problems when you consider English. And then come down to Tamil. The finite verb structure is verb plus tense marker plus PNG marker. PNG is person, number, gender marker. As we saw that. For example, avan bandan, va is come, inda is the tense mark, past tense marker, an is the PNG. This is a structure, whether it's past tense, present tense, future tense, or whatever be the aspectual markers like continuous or perfect, etc. The structure remains same. Whereas Hindi, verb plus tense marker plus auxiliary verb. For example, wo aata hai, wo aati hai, wo aaya, wo aayi. For example, these are all the things you know, maybe you know better than me, and these are all the structures of different structures. When you take I have done, have is the perfect aspectual marker. Whereas in Tamil, if you come vandirukkiran, this will be added to the verb only. The structure remains same, but you have to add iru in the middle and finite. Okay. So these are some of the features of finite verbs. And let's say agreement. Agreement is very important when you translate. For example, subject verb agreement in Tamil. In Tamil, we have only one agreement, subject and verb agreement. All Dravidian language except Malayalam. Malayalam doesn't have this agreement, PNG, person, number, gender marker in the ordinary sentences. Simple sentences are complete, whatever may be the sentence. Whereas you see, Avan Bandan, he came. Avan is the subject. So the ending will be on. PNG marker is on. So Avan Bandan. Aval is the subject, and you have all. She came. This is subject verb. Almost all Indian language we have, except more than that. You have object verb agreement also. You have adjective and noun agreement also in Hindi. Almost Aryan language, all Aryan language have adjective and noun agreement is there. So there are three agreements in Hindi, for example. subject verb, adjective and noun verb. Whereas in the Dravidian language is only one subject. So when you translate from Tamil to Hindi, for example, if I am translating, I'll be at trouble. I'll have a lot of problems because of this verb, object verb agreement, adjective noun agreement. But in English also there is an agreement, only in the third person singular. If you are using he, in the sentence is present tense singular, then you have to say he comes, she comes, it comes. Whereas the other pronouns will be come. I come, you come, he come, they come, etc., etc., except the he, she, and it. There is an agreement in English also. Now let's say adjective in Arabic. Something interesting here is, unlike English and many other languages like us, like Indian language, adjectives in Arabic language come after the noun. They qualify and should agree with it in gender and number. Sorry. As in Hindi, it should agree with a noun. Okay. For example, a big tree, a nice girl, a clever man. These are all the adjective comes before the noun, tree, girl, etc. Whereas in Arabic, Sajaraton Khabera. Tree, big. Tree, first word is tree, big is there. Tiflatan, Latifa. Girl, nice. Nice girl. Girl, nice will be the order. Rajalan, Takyan. That is man, clever. So these are differences. I just wanted to, you should understand that their languages are different. That's more important for me to. Then agreement in Hindi, this is also an interesting thing. Kumar aa raha hai. Kumar is masculine, so raha is masculine. Rani aa rahi hai. Rani is feminine, so rahi hai is okay. Kumar ne roti khai. Kumar is masculine. It should be kaya, it should be kaya, like raha. Aa raha hai, aata hai, etc. Why it is a kai? Because in the past tense, it's a transitive verb, and if the object is there, these three conditions. It should be in the past tense, should be in the transitive verb, not the intransitive verb, transitive verb, and object should be there. Kumar, ne is also come. Roti is feminine, so the agreement is between not with the subject and the verb, roti and kai. Okay, so this is a kind of difference in other than the other languages as well. Now, acha ladka, achi ladki, I need not explain these things. Now, let's go to the other examples. In Manipuri is also interesting. You see, adjective before noun, like our languages, other languages, adjectives come before the noun as well. Apaba oja, adjective marker plus good plus teacher. That means good teacher. So adjective comes before the noun like acha ladka, achi ladki, or nalla payyan, nalla asriyar. In Tamil, nalla asriyar, good teacher. Adjective after the noun also it comes, as in let's say Arabic. Oja apaba. Apaba is again the good. Teacher good is the mean. But ama is there. So there are small changes in this one, Manipuri. For example, adjective and agreement is also there. Like acha ladka, achi ladki. Pajaba nupi, beautiful woman. Pajabi nupi. Pajaba nupa. Nupa masculine, so a should be added. Nupi feminine, e is added. Pajabi nupi macha and pajaba nupi macha. So you can understand that beautiful woman, handsome man, etc. They have to agree. As in Hindi, they have to agree. Now, pronouns, for example, another interesting thing I will just tell. Tamil, English, Hindi, and Manipuri, I take it. Okay. Now the first row, avan, aval, avargal, adu, avai. So in English, avan, he, aval, she, avargal, they. Human noun. Human plural is different. Okay. Adu, it. Avai, they. It's a non-human plural. Now see this one. In English, he, she, it are there, and they is common for both human and non-human. Whereas in Tamil, human and non-human are differently used. But they come down to Hindi. Wo is common both for he and she. They is for they, human and non-human. Okay, wo is also there. While wo represents he, she, and it. So how to understand all these things? At least in Hindi, you have the ending. O aya, o ai. Okay. So at least we can say dahi, for example, paras raha hai, rahi hai. Dahi is E ending. No. Pani is E ending. But they are masculine. So there are exceptions also in the language, in Hindi. Pani baras rahi hai or raha hai, because that's masculine. Dahi also is like that. There are exceptions to the rules in Hindi also. So these are all the, you can compare it with all the pronouns. Or come down to Manipuri, mahak, mahak and mahak for he and she. But here interesting thing is, there is no agreement in Manipuri. So mahak, whether he or she, cannot be understood by the sentence alone. You have to go before that. If you are using Rani, Raja, etc. in the previous sentence, mahak will accordingly be masculine or feminine. We have to think of that. Okay. And let's go word order. Word order, as I told you earlier, strict word order in English. You cannot change the word order. Kumar killed a snake. For example, you cannot change snake first and Kumar second. So that way snake will kill Kumar. But here what we mean is Kumar killed a snake. So a snake killed Kumar cannot be, because the order is always same, very strict. Whereas in the Indian languages, it is fluid. You can change the word order because of the case markers. Kumar Samko Mara. Samko, ko is there. With ko you can change. Samko Kumar, Kumar ne, of course you have to say. Okay. Kumar Pambai Kondran in Tamil. Kumar Pambai Kondran. Pambai Kumar Kondran. Kondran Kumar Pambai. Any possible. The three words can be changed anywhere. It will not change the meaning because of our case markers. Whereas in English, the word order gives the subject or object positions. Okay, how to translate from English? Then there's a problem. You could see some problem. As November 11 was a Saturday, I am giving you an example. The girls had gone to school at 8 a.m. and returned by 11:30 a.m. when the parents had gone out of work. The girls were playing with an old newspapers in the corridor outside there. This is from the newspaper, okay, story. But how to translate this one? Very simple is, you go from the bottom. The clue is, the last red line you see, the clue is, you start from the last phrase and go back one by one. You will arrive at your language sentence structure. This is what is, you see, in our translations, we go from subject to etc. Whereas when you are English translation, you go from the last phrase. One by one, you phrase translate. As here, see, number 1 to 5. As November was Saturday, the girl. So I am not reading this one. This is the word order, phrase order, not word order. Phrase order in English. We can go from the last phrase and go back to the sentence. Okay. Now, little about the semantics, little meaning. Semantics, study of meaning. I'm not going to in detail because plenty of things are there. So the meaning of words from source language to the receptor language. Receptor language is target language, makes another problem in translation. There are a lot of problems. For example, padi in Tamil, it means read, a step, a measure, etc. But when you are reading, translating this one into English or Hindi, you should know which padi is used in that. You may know the meaning of padi, but still, padi as a verb is read. Padi as a noun is step or measure. A step where, when you are climbing, it is padi, step. When you are measuring some godi or let's say wheat or rice, you can. So, pachai is in Tamil again. This green, tender, full, cold, etc. It depends on the context of usage, as in pragmatics, as I told you. This is true of all languages. You have a lot of homophonous forms. Okay, so that will give you a little problem. Issue in English. You may ask you, I will ask you, if you ask me, sir, how many issues you have? I'll say I have 5. What, 5 issues? 5 children? You will say, no, I am telling about problems. Issue means problems. Issue means children. Issue means you. Okay, so it depends again on the sentence structures. You will use that. For example, in Kana Hindi, it has eat and get also. Do you know where do we use get? Where? To get. It is fine. It is a normal word or normal meaning. Get. When somebody was asking a Bengali, the Hindi person was asking a Bengali man, "Hey, you eat chai, pani, etc. You eat because chai kaben, kabo, kaben, chai kaben, etc." So when you say that, why do you eat chai? Then this Bengali was intelligent person. He asked the Hindi person, "Yes, we eat chai, pani, etc. But you people eat chapal. You eat chapal also." That means that is the difference between the two languages. Juta kate ho, juta khao, etc., etc. So khana has get. These are all idiomatic expressions or whatever maybe, but there are issues in use of words. So when you say "main pani pita hu," when you write in Bangla or Odia or Assamese, you have to make it khata. Okay. So these are all sentences, and let's see the another one. Translation, shades of meaning. Even words will have shades of meaning. Several subtle shades of meaning will be there. Example sentences are, it's time to translate our ideas into action. Here, translation is not translation of sentences. Translation of ideas. So translate here is change or bring your ideas into action. This is, the cars are translated into scraps. Cars are scrap is one of things. So they change. Car is changed into scraps, and you get salt or sugar for that. Okay. In that way it goes. And then towards the end of it, linguist's role now. Our Pandey was our Matthew was telling about, we have human translators versus machine translation or machines. Now, what are the problems there? You can decide yourself whether this word is good or not. For a machine, it cannot, because translators use their experience. We have experienced. So our experience will be our plus point in translation. Or our intuition. Machine has no intuition. Machine has no experience. Machine has no deciding problem-solving mechanism unless you program it. Unless you pre-program and give it to that, machine cannot translate, whereas we can. Our rules of language structures. We know the language rules. As I told you, acha ladka, achi ladki, we can say good boy. If you ask them good boy, if you ask the good boy and good girl, you ask the machine to translate into Hindi, acha ladka, acha ladki. It may, I do not know. Unless you give a rule that if it's a masculine, acha, if it's a feminine, achi, etc., machine cannot translate. This cannot be done by a machine. This is a problem. Why we have not achieved the machine translation yet is our brains are more powerful. We have experience. We store our experiences. We have our intuitions, experience, exposure, etc. We store in our brain. Computer can also, but it may take time. To make the machine work intelligently and take intuitive decisions, wherever necessary, we need rules which can be provided only by linguists. So even if you make a machine to work, you need a linguist. You need a linguist to give the rules. As we have discussed so far, a lot of discussions we had about the morphology, syntax, semantics, etc., and the contrastive analysis between Tamil, English, Hindi, and other Indian languages as well, Odia, and one from Arabic. With this, you know now, languages are different. This is what I wanted you to know. The first point is, you should know that languages are different, the structures are different, the culture is different, and we will go for translation. Okay, now, thank you very much for patient listening. In the online course, you have to be patient only. There is no other problem. You have to be. And if you are doing, if this man is walking, but I can have the full screen, but it may not work. You may not see that. Anyway, let's see. Okay. If you are seeing this one, okay. If you are translating, I give you a present gift for you. If you have achieved with from what I have told you, it's good. and our nation is our nation. And we have lot of similarities and lot of dissimilarities also, or differences also. With that, I close. Thank you very much, my dear friends.
You explained us about the subject for everything, that how we can translate all those things. But what about the exclamatory things? For example, we know when a dog barks, the sound of dog in every country is same, but in every language the expression is different. In Hindi we say bhaw bhaw kar raha hai, bhauk raha hai, but in English we say it's barking.
Yeah.
So similarly,
Barking,
what we can do about the sound?
No, these are all traditional use of the idiomatic expressions in languages. For example, the same dog from Uttar Pradesh, when it comes to Tamil Nadu, it will bark lol. We call it lol. So it changes its language. We cannot take it to Telugu, Andhra Pradesh, it may be little differently. What do you say, Matthew?
Bhau, sir.
So these are idiomatic expressions which are different from language to language. You have a list of all these things. All idiomatic expressions, when you are going to translate, you should have. That's what, for the machine, we normally say, we have tools, sentence structure tools, and then morphological tools, etc. With that, this idiomatic expression should also be different. Unless you know that, if you write Bobo, the dark Bobo kya karta hai, we will say, what is that Bobo? Bow is B-O-W. bow and arrow. So this will be a problem. So we have to, no doubt, understood very clearly. Thank you very much, Benita. Okay. Thank you very much. I think, Prerna, you have another question? Did you follow this one?
I think Jaya.
No, sir, I got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next, I think Jaya has some
Yes,
question.
sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So thank you so much for your very clear lecture, sir. We perceived all the aspects very clearly through your lecture. We understood it like that way. Sir, I have no question actually. I have one query actually.
Okay.
Sir, there is one text in Sanskrit, one act play. I'm not well versed in the Sanskrit language actually.
Doesn't
But
matter.
I read that text in Hindi translation and I found it very interesting and I want to translate it in English. So that translation will be valid or not? Because the original text is in Sanskrit and I read it in Hindi, and due to interest and due to likeness of the subject matter, I want to translate it in English. So if I go to translate the text from Hindi to English, then will it be valid or not?
Now, I would say if you make a via media, there will be problems, because once you have translated from Sanskrit to Hindi, you have changed as per Hindi grammar or Hindi cultural difference. Okay, and then from Hindi to the English, that means you have already lost the flavor of Sanskrit. The Sanskrit flavor, in the sense, the sentence structure, the cultural point, grammatical points, philosophical points, are just like Bobo, etc. You would have already lost all those things. So secondary, we call it as secondary translation, or via medium translation is not good. From, for example, if a science material from English you are translating into Hindi, and from Hindi if I take to Tamil, it will be difficult for me, because directly from English to the target language will be easier than the via medium, because the flavor will be lost. I think I hope you have understood this one, isn't it? So your translation will have Hindi flavor and not the Sanskrit original flavor of Sanskrit.
Yes.
That's okay. So always do not go. But their problems are there. See, there are people who translate from, for example, now Sahitya Academy is translating lot of books or literature from many other Indian languages to some other language. Okay, but what happens here? The English text is available. So if you are assigning me some Hindi novel, I may not be well versed in Hindi, but I go for the English version and then translate it. So already 50% lost because of this via medium. So definitely your query is good, that you should go from one source language to directly to the target language and not via medium. Thank you. It's a good question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Somebody has marked it. We have everybody, including me. I'm discussing about the problems when I translated from Kannada to Tamil. It's a cognate language. I had plenty of problems. Then I wanted to have an English translation, and then it was available that time. So I translated. But it's better always from one language to another, and not through in English or Hindi or whatever be the language. You lose it. We lose the flavor. We lose the gist of what is. We lose the life of the translation. That will be very important. Cultural points will be lost already. So if you are translating from Sanskrit to Tamil and Tamil to English, already lost 100%. I can say 90% lost is there in the cultural values. So it's always better to translate. We have come across all these things, but my request is from today onwards, try to understand the differences between the source language and target language and try to solve them. Thank you very much.